Have you ever walked into a car dealership feeling confident about your budget, only to leave 3 hours later wondering if you just signed your financial soul away to a guy named Brad who somehow convinced you that leather seat warmers were essential for your survival? Well, you're definitely not alone, and today we're going to break down the truth about whether you should buy, lease, or finance your next vehicle. My name is Nick, and I help people navigate the murky waters of personal finance without drowning in debt or questionable life choices. If you're tired of making financial decisions based on whatever sounds good in the moment, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button if this video saves you from making a very expensive mistake. Here's something that might shock you. The average person will spend over $200,000 on cars throughout their lifetime. $200,000. That's enough money to buy a decent house in many parts of the country, yet most of us put more research into choosing a Netflix show than we do into one of the largest financial decisions we'll ever make. The car industry has perfected the art of making every option sound appealing, while simultaneously making the math so confusing that you need a degree in advanced calculus just to figure out what you're actually paying. They've got financing options, lease deals, cash incentives, and something called personal contract purchase that sounds like it was invented by someone who really enjoys making simple things unnecessarily complicated. But here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Like, car dealerships don't make most of their money from selling you the actual car. They make their real profit from the financing, the insurance, the extended warranties, and all those add-ons that somehow multiply faster than rabbits during your visit. Understanding this changes everything about how you should approach buying a vehicle. Let's start with the most straightforward option, which is paying cash up front. This means walking into the dealership with the full purchase price, handing over your money, and driving away without any monthly payments, interest charges, or complicated contracts. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, it is simple, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's always the smartest choice financially. When you buy a car with cash, you own it immediately, no monthly payments hanging over your head, no interest accumulating, and no restrictions on how many miles you can drive or what you can do with the vehicle. You can modify it, drive it across the country, or let your teenager learn to drive stick shift in it without worrying about violating some contract clause. The downside is obvious. You're tying up a significant chunk of your money in something that starts losing value the moment you drive it off the lot. Cars are depreciating assets, which is a fancy way of saying they're guaranteed to be worth less tomorrow than they are today. I'll say it's like buying a very expensive sandwich that gets smaller every time you look at it. There's also something called opportunity cost to consider. If you spend $30,000 on a car today, that's $30,000 that could have been invested in the stock market, real estate, or your retirement account. Over time, those alternative investments might generate returns that exceed whatever you'd pay in car loan interest. The second option is traditional financing, which most people simply call getting a car loan. This works pretty much like any other loan. You put down a deposit, borrow the remaining amount at a specific interest rate, and make monthly payments until the loan is paid off. At the end of the loan term, you own the car free and clear. The appeal of financing is that you don't need to come up with the entire purchase price up front. You can spread the cost over several years, making it more manageable for your monthly budget. You still own the car, so you have the same freedoms as paying cash, but you preserve your liquidity for other investments or emergencies. The catch is interest. You'll pay more for the car overall because you're borrowing money, and that privilege comes with a cost. Current car loan interest rates can vary dramatically depending on your credit score, the age of the vehicle, and the length of the loan. Someone with excellent credit might get a rate around 4 or 5%, while someone with poor credit could be looking at rates in the double digits. Here's where people often make a crucial mistake. They focus entirely on the monthly payment instead of the total cost of the loan. A dealer might say they can get your payment down to $400 per month, but they're not telling you they've extended your loan to 7 years to achieve that number. You end up paying thousands more in interest, and you're still making payments long after the new car smell has been replaced by the aroma of forgotten French fries and regret. The third option is leasing, which is essentially renting a car for a predetermined period. You make monthly payments for the right to drive the vehicle, but you don't own it. At the end of the lease term, you return the car to the dealership and either lease something else or explore other options. Leasing typically offers the lowest monthly payments because you're only paying for the portion of the car's value that you'll use during the lease period. If a car is worth $30,000 new and will be worth $20,000 after 3 years, you're essentially paying for that $10,000 in depreciation plus some fees and interest. This option appeals to people who want to drive newer cars with the latest technology and safety features. You're usually covered by the manufacturer's warranty for the entire lease period, so major repairs aren't your problem. When the lease ends, you simply walk away without worrying about selling the car or dealing with its declining value. But leasing comes with significant restrictions that can turn into expensive surprises. You're typically limited to a certain number of miles per year, often 10 to 12,000. Exceed that limit and you'll pay extra fees for every mile over. These charges can add up quickly if you have a long commute or enjoy road trips. You're also responsible for keeping the car in excellent condition. Normal wear and tear is usually acceptable, but anything beyond that can result in charges when you return the vehicle. That small dent from the shopping cart, the coffee stain on the seat, or the scratch from your neighbor's overzealous rosebush could cost you hundreds of dollars. Perhaps most importantly, leasing creates a cycle where you always have a car payment. When your lease ends, you either need to lease another vehicle or find an alternative transportation solution. You never build any equity in the vehicle, and you don't have anything to show for all those monthly payments except the memories of driving something that wasn't actually yours. The fourth and increasingly popular option is something called personal contract purchase, or PCP. This hybrid approach combines elements of both financing and leasing in a way that's designed to give you flexibility while keeping you connected to the dealership ecosystem. With PCP, you put down a deposit and the dealer sets a guaranteed future value for the car at the end of the contract period. Your monthly payments are calculated based on the difference between the car's current price and that future value, similar to leasing. However, at the end of the contract, you have choices that you don't get with a traditional lease. You can return the car and walk away. Just like with leasing, you can make a final payment equal to the guaranteed future value and keep the car, or you can use any equity in the vehicle toward the deposit on your next car purchase. This flexibility sounds attractive, but it comes at a cost. PCP deals often have higher interest rates than traditional financing, and the guaranteed future value is typically set conservatively to protect the dealer's interests, not yours. The dealership loves PCP because it keeps you in their ecosystem. When your contract ends, they'll be right there with a shiny new deal ready to roll your existing arrangement into something even more complex. It's like a financial subscription service where you never quite escape, and somehow the monthly cost keeps creeping upward each time you renew. Now here's where things get interesting, and by interesting I mean potentially wallet crushing. Most people make their decision based solely on monthly payment amounts, which is exactly what the dealership wants you to do. It's like choosing a mortgage based on how the monthly payment sounds without considering whether you're buying a mansion or an overpriced garden shed. Let me walk you through some real numbers using a typical family car worth around $30,000. These calculations will probably make you question every financial decision you've ever made, but stick with me because understanding this could save you thousands if you finance this car with a 15% down payment, which would be $4,500, and get an interest rate around 11% for 3 years. Your monthly payment would be approximately $810. Over the life of the loan, you'd pay about $34,000 total. At the end, you own the car outright and could potentially sell it for around $16,000, making your net cost about $18,000 for 3 years of ownership. Now let's look at leasing the same vehicle. With the same down payment, your monthly lease payment might be around $345. That sounds fantastic until you realize that after 3 years and about $17,000 in total payments, you have absolutely nothing to show for it except possibly some stress-induced gray hair from worrying about mileage limits. The PCP option sits somewhere in the middle, like that friend who can't decide where to eat dinner and suggests every restaurant in town. Using the same down payment and assuming the car will be worth $15,000 at the end of 3 years, your monthly payment would be around $453. If you return the car, you've spent about $21,000 with nothing to show for it. If you decide paying the final $15,000 to keep it by $1,000 balloon payment, your total cost balloons to $36,000. Here's what's particularly sneaky about these numbers. The PCP option, which dealers love to promote as flexible and customer-friendly, actually costs you more than almost any other choice if you end up keeping the car. And if you return it, you've spent $4,000 more than you would have with a simple lease. But wait, there's more complexity to consider because apparently buying a car needed to be more complicated than filing your taxes while blindfolded. The opportunity cost of tying up your money varies significantly between these options. If you bought the car outright for $30,000 cash, your net cost after selling it would be only $14,000, making it the cheapest option mathematically. But here's the catch that financial advisors love to point out while adjusting their wire-rimmed glasses, that $30,000 could have been invested elsewhere. If you had invested that money in something generating a 7% annual return, it would have grown to about $37,000 over 3 years. Even after paying the additional financing costs of the loan option, you might come out ahead by keeping your cash invested rather than tied up in a depreciating asset. This is where your personal financial situation becomes crucial. If you're someone who would actually invest that money rather than spend it on something equally questionable, then financing might make sense. If you're the type of person who would use that extra cash to finally buy that hot tub you've been eyeing, then paying cash for the car is probably the better choice for your financial discipline. The psychological factors are just as important as the mathematical ones, and they're often completely overlooked in these discussions. Some people genuinely sleep better at night knowing they own their car outright and don't have monthly payments hanging over their heads like a financial sword of Damocles. Others prefer the flexibility of always driving something newer and letting someone else worry about major repairs. If you're the type of person who keeps cars until they're held together with duct tape and hope, buying makes more sense. You can drive that vehicle for 10, 15, or even 20 years if you maintain it properly. The longer you keep it, the better your cost per year becomes. On the other hand, if you're someone who gets bored with your car after a few years and starts browsing dealer websites during your lunch break, leasing might actually save you money compared to constantly trading in vehicles and absorbing the depreciation hit each time. There are also practical considerations that don't show up in the financial calculations but can significantly impact your experience. When you lease, you're typically driving a car that's under warranty for the entire lease period. No unexpected repair bills, no worrying about whether that strange noise means your transmission is about to give up on life. When you own a car, especially as it gets older, you become intimately familiar with your local mechanic and the inside of automotive repair waiting rooms. Those costs aren't predictable, and they tend to increase as the vehicle ages. A major repair bill can quickly wipe out any savings you thought you were gaining by owning. Mileage restrictions on leases can be deal breakers for some people. If your daily commute is long, or if you enjoy spontaneous road trips to places where cell service becomes a distant memory, those excess mileage charges can add up faster than compound interest on a credit card. The standard lease allows for about 10 to 12,000 miles per year, which sounds reasonable until you actually calculate your driving habits. Factor in your daily commute, weekend errands, family visits, and that annual vacation drive to see your relatives who live inconveniently far away. And you might discover you're a higher mileage driver than you realized. Excess mileage charges typically range from 10 to 25 cents per mile, which might not sound like much until you're facing a bill for several $1,000s when you return the vehicle. Suddenly, that low monthly payment doesn't seem quite as attractive. Then there's the condition clause, which can turn lease returns into negotiations that would make used car salespeople proud. The lease agreement defines normal wear and tear, but those definitions can be surprisingly strict. A small dent, a stain that won't come out, or tires that are worn beyond the specified tread depth can all result in additional charges. Smart lessees budget for professional detailing and minor repairs before returning their vehicles, but even then, you're at the mercy of the dealer's inspection standards. What you consider normal wear might be deemed excessive by someone whose job depends on finding reasons to charge additional fees. The modification restrictions on leases can also catch people off guard, especially those who view their vehicle as an extension of their personality rather than just transportation. Want to tint your windows darker than the factory specifications? That's probably going to cost you when you return the car. Thinking about adding a roof rack for your kayaking adventures or installing a hitch for that small trailer? Better check your lease agreement first, because modifications that seem perfectly reasonable to you might violate your contract terms. This brings us to a fundamental question that most people never ask themselves before signing any car deal. What do you actually need from a vehicle? And what are you just convinced you need by marketing departments who have PhD degrees in making you feel inadequate about your current transportation situation? The average person drives less than 40 miles per day and rarely has more than 2 passengers, yet somehow we've been convinced that we need vehicles capable of towing a boat to Alaska while comfortably seating 8 people and their emotional support animals. This disconnect between actual needs and perceived requirements is where a lot of financial damage gets done. If your primary use for a car is commuting to work and running errands, that luxury SUV with heated and cooled cup holders might be overkill. A reliable, fuel-efficient sedan or compact car could meet your actual needs while saving you hundreds of dollars monthly. But admitting that requires acknowledging that maybe you don't need a vehicle that could double as a mobile command center during the zombie apocalypse. Here's something else that rarely gets discussed in these car buying conversations. The total cost of ownership extends far beyond your monthly payment, regardless of which option you choose. Insurance costs can vary dramatically between different vehicles, and those differences compound over time. A sporty car that makes you feel 20 years younger might also make your insurance company feel like charging you 20% more in premiums. Luxury vehicles often require premium fuel, specialized maintenance, and replacement parts that cost more than some people's monthly rent. That European luxury sedan might seem like a reasonable lease deal until you discover that an oil change costs 3 times what you'd pay for a domestic vehicle. Fuel efficiency becomes increasingly important as gas prices continue their impression of a roller coaster designed by someone with a sadistic sense of humor. A vehicle you calculate one that gets 30 miles, that gets 20 miles per gallon, versus per gallon might not seem like a huge difference until fuel cost difference years. The financing to extend over several interests has also Earthship's offering everything become the annual with deal loan landscape more complex. From zero deals, percent terms that stretch longer than some college degree programs, that 0% financing sounds incredible until you realize it's only available on vehicles that nobody actually wants to buy, or it requires you to give up other incentives that might be more valuable. Extended loan terms can make monthly payments more manageable, but they also mean you'll be paying for the car longer than you might want to keep it. There's something particularly depressing about making payments on a 7-year-old vehicle that's developed more personality quirks than your eccentric uncle at family gatherings. The timing of your purchase can also significantly impact your costs, regardless of which payment method you choose. Like, end of model years, end of months, and end of quarters can all present opportunities for better deals as dealers try to meet sales targets and clear inventory. However, this also means you might end up with a car that's technically a year older than current models, which can affect. So there you have it. Whether you buy, lease, finance, or go with PCP, the car industry will find a way to separate you from your money faster than a magician makes a rabbit disappear. The key is understanding the total cost, not just the monthly payment that sounds manageable until you realize you'll be making it longer than some prison sentences. Do the math, consider your actual needs versus your ego's demands, and remember that the shiniest deal is usually the one designed to benefit the dealer most. Your future self will thank you for choosing wisely instead of impulsively.